Ishvare kartruta buddhihi sattvopadeyatantime swakarma parinamascha shastra sarartha uchyate. Krishna takes up very important topics towards the end of the Gita. In the process of summarizing the Gita, he not only revisits key principles, he also provides us total clarity on some of the most profound principles required for successful life and living. Swakarma parinamascha. This is one of the most important topics throughout the Gita. How do we transform the work that we do? The work that we do must be more than just being functional. It must be transformational. This is the central theme of the Gita. Everything that we do, because any action produces consequences. That is very clear. But what is not very clear is that the consequences are twofold in nature. There are consequences that are in the outer world, external consequences, and there are internal consequences. While the external consequences are beyond our control, Krishna teaches us to manage the internal consequences. Transformation of the work that we do is about managing the inner world, the internal consequences of every action that we do. And in that process, we progress spiritually. Spiritual progress is the key to every action that we perform. But then our focus always tends to be external. Therefore, Krishna brings back our attention to the necessity for our focus on the inner consequences and management of these inner consequences. And he teaches how, in an ideal society, individual progress and social contribution can be married for the larger good. And it is in that context he presents Varna Dharma. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram api mam vidhi akartaram avyayam. He declares in the 4th chapter. He clearly says here, Arjuna, there is a need for division of work that is done in any society. And the moment we talk of division, classification, obviously that is based on certain differences. Now, if we take in this very room, obviously, the moment we need to say we need to classify, we can classify based on gender. Men and women, adults and children, those who are tall, those who are short. So, differences are very much prevalent. And any classification is based on differences. And in a society, it therefore becomes important to use norms for classification. So Krishna, in the process of presenting Varna Dharma, he uses 3 norms in order to divide people, classify them, categorize them for only one purpose. The purpose being how to marry individual progress, social contribution. So he classifies based on guna, swabhava. He classifies based on karma, the occupation, the nature of work that is done. And inherently when we talk of karma, janma also comes in. Karma and janma are interrelated. So therefore, we see that there can be potentially 3 times 4, 12 classifications based on guna, karma, jati. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Guna vibhaga, karma vibhaga. In the last session, we discussed in detail guna vibhaga. So we said, when we look at the Varna system, there are three key steps: identification, classification, assignment. How do I identify the Varna? Based on one's Swabhava. How do I, based on identification, then I classify into various groups, various categories. And then the third most important step is assignment of work, assignment of duties. If there is a misalignment between one's identity and one's work, then there is a tussle, there is a struggle, there is a discomfort, there is a stress. This is the reason why Krishna talks about harmony, inner harmony, alignment of Swabhava and Karma. Now, our life has a very grand purpose. And this grand purpose primarily is twofold in nature. The purpose of life should be aimed towards two important things: material contribution, spiritual evolution. Whatever we do, the overriding purpose of life and living should be twofold. There is a need to contribute materially. We are all social beings. We are interdependent with each other, living together. We need to be part of this order that is the society is. And in that process, there is a need for everyone to contribute socially. Material contribution, therefore, becomes very important. Each of us have our own unique ability. And this ability, this skill, this talent, when it is put in use to serve others, then we start contributing for the larger good. Service is the rent we pay for our stay on this planet. And how do we serve? How do we serve others? How do we contribute to the larger good? We can effectively contribute only when we recognize our Swabhava. Only when we recognize our unique talents. Each of us are unique. Each of us are unique with our own unique mental makeup, our own talents, our own skills. So therefore, the moment we identify our mental makeup, our skill, our talent, and marry that with what we can do, the work that we can do, then we can serve, contribute. So therefore, material contribution by employing our abilities, but it also requires some amount of maturity. Maturity is the ability to use our abilities. It is not just enough to have some abilities. We need to first recognize them and need to have the maturity to use them. Now, along with material contribution, the other overriding purpose of life is spiritual evolution. We are all spiritual beings. So therefore, unless we evolve spiritually, then we miss out on the mission of our life and living. Now, at a broad level, how can we define spiritual evolution? When we say, I evolve spiritually, spiritual evolution is about developing a sense of maturity, which is a combination of intelligence and equanimity. Intelligence and equanimity. Maturity, developing maturity is essentially developing intelligence and equanimity. Now, intelligence is knowing the difference between the big things and the small things in life. There are big things in life and there are small things in life. We need the intelligence to know what is the big thing and what is the small thing. Equanimity is to ensure that our emotions don't make small things big and big things small. If we do not have the equanimity, we end up making small things really big. And in that process, we waste a lot of time, effort, and energy in lives. So therefore, maturity is about a good combination of intelligence, that discriminatory power, and the equanimity. And how do we benchmark ourselves? How do I know that I am spiritually evolving? The only way to know that is to reflect on our own discriminatory capabilities, our own ability to discriminate between right and wrong, discriminate between higher priority and lower priorities, priorities with respect to the goal of life, and also reflect on our own equanimity, our ability to handle dualities of life, our ability to manage fragility of life, our ability to respond to uncertainties. So therefore, life is all about pursuing this purpose, which is twofold in nature: material contribution and spiritual evolution. Now, in that process, we all need to strive to fulfill our potential. Our potential fulfillment can happen through contribution, both materially and growing spiritually. So I've listed down here 4 key points for us to reflect on. 4 key points to reflect on for us to see how we can grow spiritually while contributing materially. Both are important. The 4 points being: point number 1, understand our inner map to navigate the outer terrain. Point number 2, understand that the shoe that fits one may end up biting the other. Point number 3, overcoming limitations all the time. Point number 4, making contentment as the basis of our success and not success as the basis of our contentment. We look at all these 4 points because when we look at the system of Varna, a scientific, holistic framework presented by Krishna in the Gita, the Varna system takes into account addressing all these 4 essential points, which help us maximizing our potential, fulfilling the purpose. Point number 1, understanding our inner map to navigate the outer terrain. We do not have much control on the outer terrain. In our life journey, the outer terrain keeps changing. We can wish, we can hope, we can desire for a very static, fixed, predictable outer terrain where we can navigate very easily. That's never going to happen. Now, the map with which we journey through this outer terrain, the inner map, is something we already inherit. The inner map is our mental makeup. This is what we discussed, Swabhava, our nature, which is very unique to each and every one. That is the reason why each of us navigate our life journey so very differently. Even if the terrain is the same, for a moment, each of us put on the same terrain would possibly end up taking different paths towards a goal which also could be very different. Because we all have our own mental makeup. This Swabhava is stock of vasanas. So which means what we call our nature, what we call our stock of qualities, our characteristics, is nothing but product of our own making. They are all product of our own actions. Our vasanas are products of our own making. So therefore, when we say Swabhava, nature, our characteristics, it's nothing but a product of our own actions, which once again define the nature of actions that we do in our current life. And the force of vasanas is so very strong that even if we wish them away, it is almost impossible to overcome this force. We may want to do things in a different way. That is the reason why it is extremely difficult for us to cultivate any new habit, especially if the habit is a good habit. Cultivating a new habit is almost impossible. A New Year resolution starts and ends on the same day, 1st of January. We are all programmed to behave in a very predictable manner. And this continues throughout our life, consciously or unconsciously. Our swabhava is so very strong. Our vasanas are so very strong because they are a cumulative effect of the results of actions done over several lifetimes. So therefore, the swabhava fashions, shapes the kind of our actions. And we need to realize this. If there is a misalignment between our nature and the work that we do, this misalignment also leads to discomfort all the time. That is the reason why we are never comfortable doing something which doesn't interest us. We are never comfortable doing something with which we are not comfortable. There is always that inherent distress, discomfort, when there is a misalignment between swabhava and the karma, the work that we do. But unfortunately, if we don't end up doing anything, if we let swabhava alone drive our karma, we will continue to be in the same cycle. Because vasanas driving our karma eventually accumulating vasanas is a never-ending vicious cycle. But we have to understand that the inner map needs to be discovered. If we do not discover the inner map, which means essentially not realizing our swabhava, that is step one, that is fundamental. We need to know our own characteristics, our own natures, which shape our action. Step number one. Step number two, you need to realize a shoe that fits one well bites another, which means we are all made differently. Now, this should not be then misunderstood. We all talk about the need for equality. Materially, there can never be equality. How can there be equality when we are only looking at the realm of matter? Now, take this room. Is anyone equal to anybody else based on just using our sense organs? At a level of perception, there is no equality. Everybody is unique. So where is equality? Equality is beyond what we can perceive. There is definitely an underlying equality. But we also have to live with that part of ours which is very unique, which is very different. We are a combination of Atma and Prakriti. And Prakriti is so very different. It's always changing. So there is a lot of inequalities here, and we need to remember that any work that we do, we also need to see that one material formula does not fit all. So that is the reason why any occupation, any vocation needs to be aligned with our inclination. Occupation and inclination needs to have an alignment. And every occupation presents us two things: rewards, challenges. Everything that we do, any kind of work that we do, presents us with rewards and challenges. Now, the problem is, most often we end up struggling with the challenges, not able to fully experience the rewards. Why is that? When our inclinations, our swabhava is not fully aligned with the fulfillment of the work, the rewards, if it is not fully aligned, then we will not be able to address the challenges that come in our way while doing that work, while carrying out that occupation. On the other hand, when our inclinations, when our swabhava is fully aligned with the rewards, then we can easily address the challenges. Now, going back to our discussion on the Varnas, Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. Now I'm giving the listing in reverse order because somebody asked me last week, we always keep saying Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. By listing this, we are already kind of grading them. So therefore, we should possibly practice giving it, completely changing the order in order to prove a point that there is no gradation whatsoever. Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmanas. Now, take the case of a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya, or the duty of a Kshatriya, the reward of the occupation, a Kshatriya occupation, the reward is, let's say, being a head of a state or a head of an organization. And that reward comes up with several challenges. Challenges which can prove to be very stressful. One can experience anxiety in that process. Now, somebody with a swabhava of a Brahmana, if ends up doing the work of leading an organization, leading a state, now there is misalignment between the reward and the swabhava, it would be a struggle to manage the anxiety, the stress, the challenges that would come in the process of carrying out that occupation. And vice versa. A Kshatriya would never be able to address the calmness that is required. He may think a life of a Brahmana is too boring. So, the challenges can be only managed and addressed when there is an alignment between the swabhava and the reward. So therefore, take the case of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna was trying to make a case to Krishna saying, hey Krishna, I have to retire from this battlefield of Kurukshetra and I have to lead a life of sannyasi. Now, Arjuna, a Kshatriya, with a swabhava of a Kshatriya, can never do the occupation of a Brahmana. This is what Krishna was trying to teach Arjuna. Hey Arjuna, it will be a disaster. It will be a disaster if you even try to kind of wear the shoes of a Brahmana. One cannot easily go against one's own swabhava. One cannot suppress one's nature, and if one suppresses one's nature and adopts a vocation, an occupation which is totally against one's nature, it becomes unsustainable. And many of us experience this at different points in time. The work that we do and our inclinations, our aspirations, our nature, many a time get head on, and we find it so very difficult to manage this conflict all the time. And our focus is always on managing that conflict, and we end up losing all the time. Point number 3, overcoming our limitations. What do I mean by that? All of us have limitations. Now, what kind of limitations? We are all products of all the 3 gunas. Each of us are products of the 3 gunas, as we discussed: sattva, rajas, tamas. So, which means none of us are 100% sattvic. We are not, Shuddha Sattva is not possible here. Which means there is rajas, there is tamas. So rajas and tamas are going to bring imperfections, limitations. So therefore, all of us have limitations. Now, how can we challenge our limitations is the question that we need to ask. In the work that we do, in all our actions, in our duties that we perform, how can we challenge our limitations? Answer is very simple. by limiting our challenges. It may sound a little tricky. Let me explain it so that we understand the profundity of the statement. How can we challenge our limitations? By limiting the challenges, which essentially means we are presented with too many challenges as we do our work. And most often, we are struggling with all these challenges at different levels. The more the number of challenges, more distracted we are all the time. And it's a never-ending battle. One challenge we overcome, 10 other challenges are out there. So what is the solution to this? Prioritizing, bringing our focus, limiting the number of choices. When we limit the number of choices, limit the number of challenges, when we limit the number of challenges, then with the limited challenges, we can challenge and we can try to improve ourselves. So therefore, how do we limit the number of challenges? This is where we need to bring alignment between the work that we do, the karma, and the swabhava. Now, in the varnashrama system, in the varna system, when we talk about assignment of work, what is the right kind of occupation that one must do? Assignment. That assignment has to be aligned with the swabhava. When there is this alignment, then the number of challenges are limited. The challenges are all about dealing with the work that is done. If there is no alignment, there are other challenges in terms of this misfit between what we can do and what we are doing, and it would be very difficult to overcome these challenges. So, limiting our challenges and addressing those limited challenges is point number 3 in the process of maximizing our potential. Very important point. Point number 4. Making contentment the basis of our success. Now, most often we look at success as the basis of our contentment. We want to achieve something, get some reward, which we believe will give us that satisfaction. But in that process, many times we don't get the reward that we are seeking. There is a gap between our expectation and the result. And when success becomes the source of our satisfaction, we are always in a state of dissatisfaction, always in a state of frustration. On the other hand, when contentment becomes the basis of our success, even if we fail, we are not really, we do not lose our peace. We are always contented, always satisfied. That is the reason why the work that we do, the duty that we carry out should be a combination of two things. What we internally we should be comfortable, externally we should be competent. Two important points. Now, this is very relevant to any work that we do. If we need to do any work successfully, any duty that needs to be performed, external competence obviously is necessary. Internal comfort is also important. If we are not internally comfortable doing the work, then whatever we end up doing will be either externally disastrous or internally disastrous. But disaster is guaranteed. No, we cannot ask a surgeon to become we cannot ask a carpenter to become a surgeon, right? Both are in a way, cutting, but two different things altogether. So, making contentment the basis of success. So, when we look at Varna Dharma, therefore, all these 4 key aspects are taken in order to enable us maximize our potential. So, Krishna, in the 18th chapter, Shloka 41, beautifully summarizes. He says, Brahmana Kshatriya Visham, Shudranam cha Parantapa. Hey Parantapa, hey Arjuna, Karmani Pravibhaktani, Swabhava Prabhavair Gunaihi. Karmani Pravibhaktani. What is Karmani Pravibhaktani? The duties are divided, classified. Hey Arjuna, the duties that need to be carried out in society are divided and classified. 4 categories are identified, he says. And how are these categorizations done? He says, Swabhava Prabhavair Gunaihi. Swabhava, one's nature, which is born of the three gunas. So essentially, hey Arjuna, based on the three gunas, one's swabhava is shaped. One's nature is shaped by the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. And based on one's swabhava alone, one must shape the nature of one's duty, he says. Brahmana Kshatriya Visham. We can, chant this all together. Brahmana Kshatriya Visham. Shudranam cha parantapa. Karmani pravibhaktani. Swabhava prabhavair gune. So, 4 classifications, once again he summarized. What he started off in the 4th chapter on the 4 divisions, 4 classes, Krishna now brings all the principles together and summarizes and uses Varna Dharma in the context of transformation of work that we do. Karma Yoga, the foundation of Karma Yoga is Varna Dharma, Krishna says. So, we need to understand the significance of Varna Dharma as a foundation for Karma Yoga. So, Krishna says the duties are to be looked upon into 4. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And they are based on Swabhava, which is based on the 3 gunas.